Before coming, however, to this kind of crucially important empowering activity, let us look at another aspect of empowerment, which may be a factor in women's repositioning beyond the domestic: the capacity to earn a livelihood. There's a famous South American cartoon in which one peasant says to another, "I used to be miserably poor and couldn't read. I went to the literacy class and now I'm just miserably poor." No one suggests that acquisition of literacy automatically leads to improvement in livelihood, but we have seen that without literacy, a person at the present time is at a continuous disadvantage, permanently disempowered, and we can confidently claim that appropriate literacy is an empowering key to a better livelihood. Brack lists the ability to earn a living as one of the key features of empowerment. There are many case studies illustrating how literacy acquisition may assist in helping people to do so, and I can only give one or two examples here. Notwithstanding some non-literate people's phenomenal powers of memory, in a money economy, record keeping is generally helpful in farming and in business transactions, while in some economic activities, knowledge of measurement is critical. To take a simple example, farmers, both male and female, introduced to the use of fertilizers to increase crop yields, need to be able to read instructions or the writing on a packet, and they then have to measure the correct amounts or mixes. Also, in rural areas, occupations such as carpentry, bricklaying, and tailoring all require skills of record keeping and measurement. International agencies, often NGOs, send tools and sewing machines to poor countries. These can only be used effectively if the recipients can record family or customers' measurements and then apply them correctly. Now, in present-day rural economies, many people are self-employed as farmers, fisherfolk, or craftspeople. How do they take care of their earnings? In Asia and Africa, there are quite widespread traditional institutions along the lines of a tontine, whereby participants, usually women, pool their resources and each takes all the profits in their turn on a given day. This arrangement enables individuals to have access occasionally to a capital sum, but has evident limitations. A participant has to await her turn, and there's no flexibility. Once at least some members of the group have access to literacy, it becomes possible to organize a more flexible savings system. In Zimbabwe, before the recent economic collapse, the savings development movement comprised about 5,700 clubs in the villages. Each club deposited their money in the post office and had a committee to monitor it and deal with application by members for loans. More than 200,000 women belonged, and members related to me some of the benefits they had. Some bought a few chickens or some seed and plants, some cake baking equipment, even a sewing machine, and could then begin to, as they expressed it, put bread on the table, reinforcing at least the beginnings of economic independence. The experience of organizing such an enterprise has a further empowering effect. The women learn skills of organization and concepts of accountability. For urban people and people in formal employment, there are more ways in which they may be fortified by literacy. They can't avoid encountering banks. Sometimes they're forced to use a bank because large employers will pay their wages into one. In South Africa, I met quite a number of both men and women who came to literacy classes because they were quite helpless when they had to access their pay through a cash machine. As one middle-aged trade unionist explained to me, he felt demeaned because he had to hang about outside the bank until he saw someone who looked trustworthy and ask him or her to get his money out. Relevant literacy overcame that demeaning helplessness. Even when people are not forced by circumstances, they may wish the services of a bank. Cooperatives and traders' associations, once they become guardians of considerable monies, want to have recourse to an ordinary commercial bank. There's a classic story from India of the Self-Employed Women's Association, SEWA, in Ahmedabad. Some of the members wanted to put their savings in the bank, but when they got there, the supercilious clerk dismissed them, saying he would need signatures before they could open their account. The committee went away, but nothing daunted, they searched out a school teacher and sat with her all night to learn how to write their names. In the morning, they went back and were able to open their account. One can only imagine how they must have felt back in control. A non-literate person may be put to all kinds of disadvantage when employed in an industrial economy. Non-literates are open to simple cheating, as was a group of women road labourers in Rajasthan. Unknown to them, the man who was their gang boss set aside for himself 10% of their wages. When he paid them at the end of the week, they put their thumbprints to the receipts, but were actually paid less than was written down. The gang boss was only found out after one of the women, Raj Kumari, went to literacy classes, in spite of family opposition and the jeers of other villagers. As a result of her new learning, and as she testifies her new confidence and what she called her arguing power, she exposed the boss's deception to her fellow workers. His first response was simply to sack her, but when she persuaded her colleagues to go on strike so that he risked being found out by his employers, he capitulated. Here's a straightforward example of literacy empowering people to counter oppression. Elsewhere in India, Sewa used more sophisticated legal literacy to take cheating employers to court. They persisted for nearly 10 years through the courts in one complex case affecting a group of women outworkers. In the end, they won.